The Marxist critical approach is mostly concerned with answering the question, who does the world benefit? It focuses on the class difference, economics, and otherwise that are prevalent in a capitalist society. It is also concerned with how lower and working classes are oppressed both in everyday life and in artistic work. The Marxist school of thought is guided by the process of thinking called the material dialectic. In this process, it is believed that the material realities of society's economic base are what drives and further historical change. Furthermore, Marxism believes that stable societies tends to develop side of resistance. The conflict between classes leads to contradiction in social system that ultimately lead to social revolution and the rise of a new society. In this cycle continues because there will always be conflict among the upper, middle, and lower classes, and this will always be reflected in literature and other forms of expression. Naniniwala kasi sila na ang literature reflects this class struggle at ang materialism. Yung parabang literature function in relation to other aspect of the superstructure, particularly others articulation of ideology. It is also interested society created by the author in the piece of literature concerned, which is by the political, economic, and social principle and policies advocated by Marx. At saka sa Marxist lens, hindi lagi kailangan na clear, rich versus poor yung ating senaryo. So let's move on in the reader response criticism. Bago pala yan, other critical approaches, formalism, feminism, and Marxism. Hindi lang yan ang dapat kailangan mo gamitin sa writing a critique. So, marami din namang examples na pwede natin gamitin. At ang una ay ang reader response criticism. Response criticism, it is the reaction of the consumers of the work are vital to interpreting the meaning of the work. It believes that the role of the readers is very important in understanding literature and other expression of arts. Siyempre, meron tayong mga iba't ibang iniisip sa tuwing nagbabasa tayo, may matulad ng imagine, diba? Meron din tayong understanding about that story or about that kung ano man ang ating mga binabasa. Meron tayong mga sariling pinag-iisip, meron tayong sariling imagination, understanding, at kung ano-ano pa. Readers are also not passive in the consumption of literature, but are, in fact, active in searching of meaning in the words that they consume. So, example, meron kang hindi ka ito naintindihan, kailangan talaga natin yan intindihin. Kaya nga, diba, mahalaga yung ating pag-iintindi sa anong ibig sabihin yan, meaning of the words. Readers' response criticism can be combined with other critical approaches, but in general, they can follow the few questions. At ito na nga, how does the interaction of the text and reader create meaning? Do they sound shapes of the word as they are appear on that page, or how they are spoken by the reader enhance or change the meaning of the word or word? How might we interpret a literary text to show that the reader's response is similar or related to the topic of the story? Ito kasing reader response criticism analyzes the reader's role in the production of meaning. It lies about the opposite end of the spectrum from the formalistic criticism. In reader's response criticism, the text itself has no meaning until it reads by a reader. The reader creates the meaning. Siyempre, siya kailangan niya dapat i-research yun. Dapat alam niya talaga yung anong ibig sabihin ng word na yun. So, we have to bring our own imagination to see the works of full potential. It's simply a reader's response to the literary text of which we're reading. Siyempre, diba, meron tayong mga words na hindi natin naiintindihan habang tayo nagbabasa. Kaya doon tayo nagre-respond sa literary text na yun, kung saan natin binabasa yung word na yun. Kaya nakaka-create tayo ng new meaning or new understanding sa sarili natin. So, kung babalik tayo dun sa The Happy Prince, as a reader yourself, how did you react to the story? Paano ka magre-react sa story na yun? Did it evoke a feeling of pity for the prince and the swallow? Did you agree with the prince's solution to the poverty around him? Think about your reaction and interpretation, and includes them in your critique using the reader response criticism. Kung ano ka magre-response doon, kung anong reaction mo doon, yun, gamitin mo yun. So, yun ang reader response criticism, kung paano mo i-response, kung paano mo iintindihin yung word na yun. Check lagi niya These theories explored and attempt to explain concepts like repression, sexuality, fulfillment, and unconscious. Using psychology in literacy analysis could add another layer to the meaning behind language and symbolism. What we read and symbols we see in a text could be reflective of some unconscious fear or desire. While psychoanalytic criticism has many approaches, it can be summarized into three techniques. First, investigate the creative process of the artist. What is the nature of literary genius, and how does it relate to normal mental function? Focus on a particular artist or author, usually nothing how their biographical circumstances could affect or influence their motivation. Go back to this short passage from the story of an hour. She could see in the open square before her house the tops of the trees that we are all aquiver with the new spring life. The delicious breath of the rain was in the air. In the street below, a peddler was crying his way. The notes of a distant song which someone was singing reached her faintly, and countless sparrows were twittering in the eaves. There were patches of blue sky showing here and there through the clouds that had met and piled one above the other in the west facing her window. The passage described what Louise could see, hear, and feel from her window. As mentioned earlier, in a literary analysis using psychoanalysis, what we read and the symbol we see in text could be reflective of some unconscious fear or desire. The sensation Louise could see and hear from her window could be representative of the freedom she never knew she had long wished for. Feeling them now, alongside the news of her husband's death could be awakened something in her that family made her realize what she had always wanted, at yun ay ang maging malaya siya. Ito kasing psychoanalytic criticism, it begins with a full psychological theory of how and why people behave as they do. Kung ano man ang nararamdaman o naririnig o nakikita ng isang character sa isang story, yun ang tinatawag na psychoanalytic. Kung ano man ang nararamdaman or anything else, at yun para kay Luis, yun na ang naririnig niya kanina, yun pala yung gusto niya ang maging malaya, yun lang ang gusto niya. Okay, so let's move on again at the historical approach. The historical approach, unlike the formalist approach, takes into consideration the social, cultural, and the intellectual context that precede the work. When and where was the work made? What was the political climate at the time? What were the dominant cultures or school of thought? Also, ang historical approach, it involves understanding the events and experiences surrounding the composition of the work, especially the life of the author and using the finding to interpret that work of literature. This, of course, also includes the author's biographical information. Who was the author? How were affected by their context and environment? How does this then affect their work? Lastly, the approach also considers how the work affects its original readers when it was published. This approach requires not just an analysis of the text or work, but also background research of an author when we are based at the time they wrote the story. So parang kailangan din natin alamin kung kailan nila ito sinulat, kung kailan nila ito ipinablish yung kanilang story. Para bang kailangan natin i-understand yung author. It is considered with yung understanding natin sa author. It is concerned with how the author original audience would have understand the writing. It takes into account the author's biography and the place in which the author wrote. Yung para bang alam dapat natin na kung kailan yun isinulat or ano yung story na isinulat ng author, yung original. Sa The Gift of Maggie and considered living conditions of the Youngs, as described in the sample, they are not well-off family and could belong to the lower class. In a historical reading of the short story, one would have to take the time to look up the time when O. Henry wrote the short story and analyze what the conditions of the time where many young people living like this young was the reason why we're as poor as they were in the story. These details can be added to your critique of the story and can be used to determine whether the story was possible. Ito kasi historical approach, kailangan mo talaga intindihin yung mga surrounding mo para makagawa ng short story para in another historical, yun naman mabasa ng iba at other and other. I think that's all. Sorry if pagaw ko karon, pagaw ko din. Yun lang. Bye.